I'll do a little introduction. Obviously, my name is Zoe, and this is the Dystrophy Diaries podcast. And I really created this podcast because, as a disabled person, I think not only did I want to raise awareness of my own disability, but I wanted to share kind of what it's like to live and not be defined by your disability and your experiences. I think there are so many incredible people in the community with really amazing attributes that they can offer, and they're not just one element, they're not just their disability or part of their story. So I wanted to kind of use my episodes to introduce these people, get people to know their stories, and just learn more about the people themselves. And obviously, coming across you and your book, I was really inspired and kind of taken with all that you've achieved. So I wanted to have you on, not just to meet you, but to hear more about your story and your journey in your book.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me on.
No, honestly, it's really great to meet you. So I think I'll start with the basic question, which is, what really inspired you to write your book? What was it about your journey and your story?
Yeah, so I wrote the book, The Anti-Ableist Manifesto, in response to the question, how can I show up better for the disability community? And this is a question that I think all of us get all the time who have disabilities. But my entrance into this space comes based on my own personal lived experiences of being involved in a car accident. At the age of 9, I was in a car accident. My dad was driving. He unfortunately passed away. And I acquired a handful of injuries and disabilities, including permanently paralyzing one of my arms, breaking a couple bones in one of my legs that would leave me as a temporary wheelchair user for about 4 months, and then much later being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, which is a type of mental health disability. And I share all of that because all of our origin stories are so diverse and unique. And as someone who acquired my disability, I think my story and my perspective is going to be different from someone who was born with their disability, or maybe someone who has a disability where they still experience debilitating symptoms from it. And so yeah, this book was inspired by a social media series I have called the Anti-Ableism series. And it, again, is in response to the question, how can we show up better for the disability community? Or in response to the question, what's one thing you wish people would know or do to show up better for our community? And after a couple of months of doing that series, it had started in December of 2020, I actually had someone reach out to me asking if I had thought about writing a book, or sharing some of the things that I've learned, but doing it in a longer written format. So all of that culmination kind of became what we now see today as the Anti-Ableist Manifesto. But also, as someone who kind of grew up during the social media era, I wanted to make sure that we could create the materials in a digestible format. So the manifesto in itself is actually a piece of art. The piece of art says the Anti-Ableist Manifesto at the top, and it's got about 30 statements on it that range from things like disability is not a bad word or a bad thing, don't erase history, we are not a monolith, and essentially every statement on here actually corresponds with a chapter in the book. And so depending on how you want to engage with the book, you can engage with it as a piece of art. It's available in print, audio, or ebook, or you can just digest the social media series, which now has over 300 parts.
Wow, honestly, what a story. And I think I really love what you've done there with the artwork. Like, I love that, and all the different elements and quotes to being in the disabled community and stuff that we hear quite a lot. I think, as you say, your story it's a very unique perspective. I mean, everybody's journey is unique to their own, but it's nice to sort of be able to relate to everybody's different stories, and that one thing that brings us all together, which is being a part of that community. I personally wrote a book about my own experiences in the disabled community, and my purpose for doing that was really I guess to try and share my story and help people relate, but I know that the process of writing it sort of helped me find better ways that I could contribute more to helping others tell their story and accept maybe certain parts of their disability that they maybe didn't at first, and how to help them along their journey. I think, is there anything that you, through all of your work, that you feel you've really learned along the way and ways of helping and supporting others?
Yeah, one question I got a lot. So I just finished doing a UK mini tour where I think it was 9 different events throughout the UK because the book actually just launched in the UK on March 6th, but came out in the US last fall. And one of the questions I get is how we can help support disabled people in unlearning their shame. And I think a lot of us have internalized shame, or if you want to call it internalized ableism. But I think two things helped support me. Number one was finding a disability community, realizing that I'm not alone in my experience and seeing the possibility of who I could become. And then the other was kind of reflecting on a quote from Brene Brown. And she says, shame festers in secrecy, silence, and judgment. And so if there are things that we feel shame about, and for some of us, it might be our disabilities, if we are secret and silent and judge it, then it essentially shame gets more power. So I personally started to do more work around unlearning shame around my disability by kind of doing the opposite of that silence and judgment. So I looked at it and I said, okay, I don't want shame to have power over me. What are the areas that I have shame about? And can I shed a light on them? Can I talk about them more? And whether it was talking about it on social media or privately with friends or with mental health professionals, being supported in all different areas to kind of unlearn that shame, I think helped me along my journey. And I think, like you said too, I think a lot about the power of stories. And oftentimes it's not just sharing a story for story's sake. It can be sharing a story to provide some context. It can be sharing a story for our own healing, but it can also be sharing a story so that other people see themselves in our stories too.
I personally really relate to what you say there. That's really something I have enjoyed with doing this podcast and being a lot more transparent on social media with my own disability. I think it's really taken a lot of that internalized ableism that I maybe once felt, and I think the power of sharing and honesty and showing the good, the bad, the everything has really, I felt, as you put it, taken a lot of that shame out of it. And I think something that has been really comforting has been sharing those stories, but then having other people message and say, oh yeah, I experienced the same thing and I know exactly what you're referring to, and seeing them progress in their life and how they handle it with such grace and dignity, I think really motivates me and kind of inspires me to be like, actually, yeah, come on, we can all live that life, and it doesn't have to be like the big scary shadow over us almost. But yeah, I think that's a really powerful sentiment, and I imagine a lot of people in the community share it, and I think it's just such a really beautiful thing to be able to support one another, share experiences, and hopefully by telling all of our different stories, the more of us can see ourselves in them, really. But obviously I've followed you. I came across you on social media. That was really how I found you, and then found out about your book. And one thing that I noticed, and forgive me if I've misunderstood it, but it said at the bottom of your email that you've done quite a lot of fundraising. Would you mind, if I have got that correct, would you mind telling me a bit more about any of the fundraising and funds that you've raised for people?
Yeah, so I call this disability-centered economic justice. So uh, we, I, I run a couple funds, I guess is the best way to put it, where one is called the Awesome Foundation Disability Chapter. And this is an initiative I co-founded with Alice Wong back in 2017 to say every single month we're awarding $1,000 US to a disability project globally. And to date, and in a couple of months, we will surpass over $100,000 in grants given to disability projects. And so far,
Wow.
we've awarded projects to, or we've awarded micro grants to projects in 15 different countries. But it's
Wow.
all done through what is called like participatory grant making. So if you
Mhm.
look at the data, I believe there's a stat out there that says that less than 2% of philanthropic funding globally goes to disability initiatives, despite our community being one of the most marginalized, I would say, but also 15% of the population. So there is a gap between the amount of funding our community is receiving and our proportion of the population. So we started this, and our we have a group of trustees, about 10 of us, and all of us identify as disabled and vote on who was going to receive the grant every single month. So the grants are open from the 1st to the 10th of every single month. So as we're recording this, we still have a couple days left if people want to submit their grant idea. But essentially, it's answering the question, do I think this project is awesome for the disability community? And that can mean a lot of
Mhm.
different things for people. But in addition to that, a couple of years ago, I also started something called the Disability Empowerment Endowed Fund. And this sits at my alma mater at Georgetown University. And essentially, how an endowment fund works is that you fundraise the initial amount, which we did, and then a small percentage of it gets distributed every single year, and the rest of it gets invested. So the first year, it may have been a small grant to go support disability scholarships, disability fellowships, research support, disability student clubs, disabled entrepreneurs and artists in residence, just anything disability related.
Mm.
And so yeah, I wanted to try and think through more creative ways that we could create some sustainable funding within the disability community that would go to help support disability initiatives. So so yeah, I think I have to update that stat in my bio. I think we're now up to maybe 98,000 in grants. We have 1 or 2 months to
Wow.
go before we surpass the 100,000.
Wow. Gosh, those numbers are just incredible, aren't they? I think the amount of work and time and effort that will have gone into those projects and you supporting them and helping them, like the difference that will have made to so many people's lives and the community, that really is just incredible, honestly. I
Yeah, and
think,
I think if anything, it reminds me of, back when I started my community Diversability in 2009, we received a $500 grant. And for me, $500, depending on who you are, is a lot or a little. But for me, it
mhm.
was, yes, the money helps support us, and we definitely need that. But it was also a vote of confidence in me and this idea when I think for a long time, like many of us within the disability community have experienced, the expectations were set really low. It's hard to
Mhm.
get people to have a vote of confidence in us. And now, even with our micro grants, I mean, what's been really cool is for a lot of people, we may be the first grant that they receive for their project, and they go on to receive much larger funding amounts from, large foundations and other things like that. But it also gets people understanding the grant process a little bit more. Our application is only 3 questions, so it's a pretty low
Wow.
lift, but I think the projects that we've been able to support, like you said, it's been really transformative for them, right? Because
Mhm.
we're meeting them early on in their journey, um, so that they are, yeah, we're meeting them early on in their journey, and we're also flipping the script in some ways on who gets to be the funder, who gets to be the decision maker? Who is awarding the grant, right? It's all, for us, it's all done within the disability community. And this is the whole point of mutual aid and community care, right? As we show up and we support each other. And for me, I think some people don't know this, but my background is actually in finance. I studied finance and accounting in university, and just trying to think through, how can I personally reinvest back into my community, but then also how can I mobilize my community to come together and help support and reinvest in our community at a larger scale.
Gosh, I think out of a bit of curiosity, and I don't know if you're allowed to share this, but is there one example of a project that you really saw and was like instantly, yes, I'd love to invest in this and support this?
Yeah, so I will share. So I am the dean of the Awesome Foundation Disability Chapter, but I also want to share leadership with our trustees as well. I don't know if there is a project per se that has been an immediate yes, but you can actually go to disability.awesomefoundation.org and you'll see all of the 90 plus projects that we have funded.
Oh, wow.
But if I think about a couple of the projects that we have funded in the past that really stood out to me, one was around an adaptive climbing group that wanted to buy some specific gear for their disabled climbers. And then we've had, podcasts like yours also apply for grants that are looking to make their podcasts more accessible. So support with the transcripts and making sure that people who are deaf or hard of hearing can also engage with the content. We've also had some projects around some like art performance projects that we have funded. But yeah, it's really broad, right? We're just funding things that we think are awesome. We have funded, I think, travel support for people who were doing some grassroots organizing. But yeah, it's been really broad. We funded a project that had provided menstrual products for girls with disabilities in schools who didn't have access to them. So it really ranges, but again, I guess I'm just really proud that now we are reaching almost 100 projects that we funded. We've also funded a lot around disability inclusive disaster response. So we have funded some projects supporting disabled survivors in Ukraine. And, there have been a lot of extreme weather events here in the US. We did one around supporting disability inclusive disaster response after the Los Angeles fires that were here. So yeah, I think we're always looking for not only ongoing projects that are awesome, but also projects that are more acute. They may come up due to different unfortunate events that are happening all the time throughout the world, and figuring out and knowing that in those cases, sometimes immediate cash support, especially in an emergency, can be really helpful.
Wow, it really is such a broad range of different areas, isn't it? I think I'll definitely have a look at these 90 projects, because I'd be really interested just to see what funding has been provided to help and what difference has been made. And it's just nice to see things being progressive, I think, in accessibility and within the disabled community. It's just nice to see it progress and develop, and people have that first bit of support, and to transform their ideas and transform their accessibility ideas for people. So absolutely, I'll definitely have a little look into that. But I think one question that I always ask my guests out of curiosity is, if there was one thing that you would like the listeners to know about either you or about your journey or about life, in the disabled community, what is one message you would like to put out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess there are two messages that come to mind, and one is I'm always thinking about ways that we can help support what I call like the disability economy. And I'll use my book as an example. So I wrote a book and I received an advance to write the book, which means that I got paid. And I used some of that money to hire a disabled designer. A disabled designer actually created the manifesto art. Her name is Jennifer White Johnson. And then I hired a disabled editor to help integrate stories from our community into the book. And for those who did contribute stories, they had an option to receive a small stipend for their time and labor and existing. And then when the book launched, we hosted our launch event in Los Angeles at a disability-owned bookstore, which also meant that we were supporting the local independent bookstore as well. And so here is one project where there were multiple points throughout the supply chain that you could support disabled people. And so if you are someone who, I don't know, enjoys buying clothes, can you support a disabled fashion designer? And I know there are some really great ones in the UK. Unhidden is one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I think there's one called Liberari, but I'm probably mispronouncing that. And I know Victoria just did a partnership with Primark too. And so if the Primark collection does well, then it also shows that there's interest in having more large brands think about having an adaptive line. If you're someone who likes candles, you can do a search for disability-owned candle company or disability-owned bookstore or disabled sound editor. Again, I think just looking at our own purchasing habits and thinking about if there are ways that we can support disabled people. I think the other message is just understanding that I think part of the journey in life is us figuring out what our gifts are. And I really do fundamentally believe that all of us have gifts to impart on the world, even if society is devaluing us in some way or another. And even for you, Zoe, I mean, having a podcast and having using your platform to help uplift other voices is a great way to kind of think about that and build your community and connect with other people. So yeah, I think it's just giving people the time and space and supporting them on their own journeys to figuring out what their gifts are.
Oh wow, Tiffany, honestly, I really love that message. I love both of them. I think the first one about reinvesting in the economy is so important, because I think, as you say, it's those choices of when you're looking at, buying whatever or using artistic people. It's so easy just to find someone in the disabled community that can offer the same thing, but that investing into them can be really transformative compared to someone that maybe isn't in the community. It's so important just to incorporate them and give us that chance to again show our unique gifts. I think that's where both messages kind of tie in together, isn't it? We all bring something unique to the table, and we all do have our own gifts. And I always say, I think we all have a purpose on this journey, and I think we all have something that we can share and bring a bit of spark and our own experience to each other. And I think that's what makes our community so supportive. And I think that everybody really wants to help. Everybody really wants to see the best. And, you can call upon anyone anytime and they'll be there. And I think that's what I really have found to be so important since I've been on this little journey and stepped into the world of being in social media and joining these groups and meeting everyone. It's really been a really lovely eye opener. So yeah, and I think even getting to meet you, if I hadn't have opened up into this community, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I feel I have learned a lot from our little chat and your book. I read some of the snippets that you sent over, but I'll definitely be purchasing it because I really feel I just would like to. I feel like I relate to a lot of it, and I think it would really help my perspective and inspire me. So yeah, so it was really great to meet you, and thank you for making the time multiple times. Honestly, I really enjoyed getting to chat to you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for reaching out.
Oh no, I saw you on, I think when you went to the is it Nadex, I can never pronounce it right, but I saw you had attended that, and that was how I came across your profile. And the minute I started reading into all the things you've done and your message, I was like, yeah, I really wanted you on the podcast and to chat to you, so thank you. I've had a lovely time. I will tag some of the people and the companies and foundations that you have mentioned so people know, and obviously where to find your book so people know where to purchase it and give it a read, because I'm sure there will be many people that listen to this that think they'd really like to read it.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you, I think if you respond to the email chain with Valentina and Hannah on it, if you didn't get a copy of the book, they can send you like a PDF copy or something if you didn't get one ahead of time.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll absolutely do that, and I'll give it a little bedtime read. And thank you so much. It was great to meet you, and hopefully we get to chat soon, and maybe, we get to our paths cross at some of these community events at some point.